going to record this for future viewing as well. So like I said, we're going to be doing a how-to webinar on how to create charts and dashboards. And I'm going to walk you through the 30,000 foot view of where do we start. This is not a beginner's course necessarily because it assumes you already know how to create your searches and knows how to load your data, how to create some searches. And what we're going to learn today is we're going to get an overview of dashboards and the panels that make up those dashboards. We're going to learn how to create dashboards from scratch. Taking a step back to learn how to chart your data first and then start creating those dashboards. And then we're going to learn how to use some of the dashboards and the features that are available, the filters, the drill downs, and we're going to do live mode twice. No, we're going to learn about live mode and know how to use that. I'm going to try to make this as demo as possible. So I'm going to get out of these slides in just a second, but at least I wanted to set the stage with a 30,000 foot view. So with Sumo Logic, the data flows in these three main stages. Data collection is getting your data into Sumo Logic through collectors and sources. And for the purposes of today, we're going to assume you've already done that or someone's already done that and you have data in your system. We're going to talk a little bit about this second point here, mainly because I'm going to show you how to chart your data. So I'm going to assume you already know how to search, you know how to analyze your data. You've pulled together a few queries that you now want to chart. You want to visually see trends over time, for example. You want to identify outliers. So we're going to learn how to chart that data. And then most of our time, we're going to be spending here in point number 3, how to dashboard that data, how to visualize it, how to add panels into a dashboard and share it with other users. All right, so what is a dashboard? Well, a dashboard is a collection of panels. If you notice here on the right-hand side, I've highlighted a couple of them. Panels are just graphical representation of your data, and a dashboard is a collection of these panels. The cool thing is that data doesn't have to be coming from the same sources. In this particular example I have on screen, all of the data is coming from my Apache Access logs, but it doesn't have to be the case. I could have data coming in from my network as well as from my custom apps or from my operating system, all into one same dashboard. One of the key things to keep in mind is that each panel that you see here has a query behind it. There's a single query behind each one of these panels. And the other cool thing is that each one of these panels, you can drill either into the query behind that panel, or you can drill into another dashboard. And the really cool thing about that, and I'll show you in just a second, is that if this is someone else's dashboard, you can always find out how those queries were built. So let me switch over here for a second to the dashboards. This that I'm showing you here are the different charts that you can create: pie charts, line charts that show you standard deviation, maps, and so on. And I'll be showing you some examples of that kind of stuff. So let's go over to an instance here, and I want to show you some dashboards that exist. By the way, these dashboards, I'm cheating here a little bit because what I'm doing is I'm pulling dashboards that already exist out of the box. So if you guys haven't heard about our apps, in this case, I'm showing you the PagerDuty app. These dashboards are already built. I didn't even have to do anything to be able to take advantage of this stuff. This one happens to be PagerDuty incidents by urgency and escalation. And you notice again that these are built out of panels that already exist. Just to kind of complete the circle on apps, let me switch to another instance and just show you how you go about installing your apps. So this screen should be fairly familiar for you. If you go in here, you go to library, down at the bottom, you have all the apps. And these are all the apps available right now. And if you install, let's say I wanted to install the Artifactory app, it comes with quite a few dashboards that already come out of the box. And this is not to say that this has 100% of what you need. This is probably 80%, but we get you almost to where you want. And on top of that, you can layer your custom stuff. So we have quite a bit of dashboards already out of the box, including some others that are preview, because these are apps that we're still working a little bit on, but they're at a stage where you can start taking advantage of them. So you notice Google Apps, Microsoft 365, MongoDB, PagerDuty is the one that I was showing you just now. All right, so this is a dashboard out of that PagerDuty app. And what's available in it? Well, one of the cool things with these dashboards is that I can interact with them. For example, here I'm showing the last 24 hours, but I could change that and perhaps I want to just show the last 6 hours in this particular dashboard. And I can do that by clicking, and it's going to run and just show me the last 6 hours for that. If I wanted to reset all my dashboards to show me the last 6 hours, I could do that from here. I can click on this panel and set all my dashboards. I chose 60 minutes, but I've now reset all my queries in this dashboard to be showing me only the last 60 minutes worth of data instead of the last instead of the values that each one of those had. I can also revert it back to the defaults for each one of the panels if I wanted to do that as well. And notice that every time I do a selection, it reruns this dashboard so that it looks for the values for the appropriate time frame. Other things that I can do with these dashboards is I can look at the filters. This dashboard was built by someone else. In this case, it was built by Ankit, as you see there. And Ankit has actually set up a few filters for me to play with. So if I click on filters, I can see the different filters that I can enter in here. And according to the filters, all the data would get refiltered by that dashboard, by that particular value that I filtered in there. Similarly, I could also just filter a specific dashboard. Let's say that I really just care about this one, high urgency incidents. I can go into the filter area on it, click on it, and then I can set up filters just for that one. And you notice that in this particular case, there are no filters that have been set up for me. So when Ankit built this dashboard, remember that he is the owner of that dashboard. When he built it, he did not specify that this particular panel had any filters. I could choose another one in here, let's say that one, and that one does have some filters that I can play with. So the story that I'm trying to tell here is that the owner of the dashboard can decide what kind of filters people can play with on a dashboard that they have. All right, I don't see any questions, so I'm going to continue. Other things that you can do is you can decide to share a dashboard or not. In this case, the dashboard is owned by this particular person, and here is the shareable link if I want to be able to share that dashboard as well. A couple of other things that I can do is I can star my dashboard to keep it as my favorites. I can refresh it, make it as full screen. I can ask for help, or I can sign out. So from an interactive perspective, I can play a little bit in here. I can enlarge any one of these by clicking on this magnifying glass so that I can show it to me in the entire page. And then what I wanted to show you was if you click on any one of these panels, for example, on this one in here, I'm just clicking on the panel, and what it's doing is it's taking me back to the search, and it's going to show me the search itself behind that dashboard. And that's extremely helpful because if this was a dashboard that was put together by someone else, I can now see how that message was put together. I can tweak it to my heart's content. Let's say I don't want to time slice by 1 hour, but instead I want to time slice by 30 minutes. I can do that change in the dashboard here and run it, and now start seeing numbers reflected according to that new parameter that I set. Okay, let's go back to those dashboards. One last thing that I wanted to show you that you can do. Here's another example of the PagerDuty dashboard that comes out of an app. This one is the PagerDuty overview dashboard. I have something called the live mode. And what live mode allows me to do is if I were to switch a dashboard to a live mode, it is now being updated automatically. Every 2 seconds, every 1 second, it's just going to update. And this dashboard is now ready for me to post it up on a big screen. Let's say that I have in my operations center, I want these dashboards to be running continuously. So that's what live mode is all about. If I have something on not live mode, meaning on interactive live mode, that means that I have to run it. I have to actually go here and say, oh, I want to refresh this, or I want to choose a different time frame for it to refresh. But by switching it to live mode, you essentially make it run on a continuous basis, and you're now ready to put those dashboards in your operations center. Okay, so far so good. Let me switch to one last dashboard in my other browser. I want to switch back to my training instance and show you a dashboard that is a little less meaningful than that PagerDuty one, but good from a training perspective. This dashboard, I'm showing you my Apache access logs, some of the things that you can do. Now notice that this dashboard, I am the owner of this dashboard. And because I am the owner, I have one more icon that is available to me, which is the edit icon. I can go ahead and do all sorts of changes to that icon. For example, if I click on the edit mode, and now I'm in edit mode, if I pull up that filters dialog again, not only do I see the filters that are available, but I have the ability to add more filters. And that's because I'm the editor of this dashboard, right? A couple of things, other things that I can do is if I'm looking at a particular panel, I can click on this cogwheel. You notice this cogwheel that is in here. If I'm say done editing, that just turns back to that magnifying glass that I showed you before, the ability to enlarge a panel if I wanted to. But if I am in editing mode, that thing turns into a cogwheel, and that cogwheel allows me to do things like change the chart type. So I can change column, I can change bar, or whatever else I want. I can change a couple of other options in here, including the dashboard linking. So if you remember, by default, when I click on a dashboard, it takes me to the query behind it. But I could change that. I could change that behavior. I can say, actually, when someone clicks on this dashboard, I want them to be taken to the Apache visitors location dashboard, for example. And if I click on save, now the behavior for that will be that as soon as I click on that dashboard, it's going to take me there. Before I save it, I'm going to show you a few other options. I can change my axes if I wanted to. I can change the colors. Let's say that I want to show it maybe this way instead, blue with green, or red with blue might be a little more striking. And then last but not least, I can see the query behind it as well. This is the query that gets run that is behind this dashboard. Now, the one thing you're going to notice is that I cannot edit the query. And there's a good reason behind that. Now, I'll show you a little more details on this. But the reason you cannot edit a query from here is because we want to force you to go to the query screen, run the query screen, look at the results, and ensure that that is exactly what you want. And only then do we then allow you to edit the query and save it back into the dashboard. All right, so for now I'm going to demo the fact that I changed the behavior on this panel. Instead of going to the query itself, this panel is going to, if I click on it, it's going to take me ideally to another dashboard as I had suggested in here. Looks like my mouse is not working. There we go. So I just clicked on that panel, and if you notice, it opened up a new tab, and that new tab is the Apache visitors locations, as I had suggested in that dashboard. So you can create linking of panels to other dashboards. Perhaps this is a dashboard that I don't have data in this particular data set, but you can link dashboards to show you a little more detail of something that you want to link to as well. All right, as I mentioned before, if I click on any other panel, it will take me to the query behind it. So in this case, it looks like this one is also mapped to another dashboard as I'm seeing it here. Let me choose, perhaps I have one in here that is not. Let me choose this one. If I click on that one, the default is this, that when I click on a panel, it takes me to the query behind that panel. Now here's the interesting thing I want to show you. If I clicked on that panel, since I owned that dashboard, it allows me to, let's say, change this. To keep it simple, I'm just going to change the time slice to 5 minutes. I can click on start. Now it's going to run the query again, and I can test and see if that is the results that I want to see. And if I'm happy with the results, it now gives me the ability to, I'm going to go all the way here to the right-hand side and either save this as a new panel, brand new panel that I want to put in a brand new dashboard, or the icon on the left-hand side. Sumo is smart enough to realize, wait, you just came from a dashboard that you own. Do you want to save it back to that panel? And that's effectively how you go about editing dashboards. Okay, so far I've shown you how to use a dashboard. I've shown you what a dashboard is all about. I've shown you how to edit existing dashboards. But let me show you how to create a dashboard from scratch, how to go ahead and start building a dashboard. And that's when I'm going to cheat a little bit here and use some searches that I had already built so I don't have to build from scratch. So again, this is a little bit advanced. I'm not going to show you guys how to build queries. But in this particular case, I'm using source category equals Apache Access. I'm time slicing that data by 1 minute. I'm counting by time slice and status code. Then I'm sorting my data. And if I look at those results, they look something like that. It gives me a count of my status codes. And this says status code 200 has had 1,453 messages for this particular time frame. But this is a little bit hard to read. So instead of doing it that way, I just uncommented this last row here called transpose, and let me run this again. Transpose works like Excel's pivot table. It just allows me to take a list and convert it into a table. So in this case, my table has my time frame or my time slices going down the first column, and it's got my status codes going above as the headers of my columns over here. So now this is a lot easier to read. I can see that for this particular minute, I've had 99 404s, I've had 174 404s, 181 404s, and this just makes it a little bit easier to read. Not only that, but it prepares it for me to start mapping or charting this data. From a charting perspective, I have quite a few options in here. The first one is the ability to download all these results. So I can export all these results and then continue to play with them in Excel or whatever I want to. Right now, I'm showing you the table view. I can show you a horizontal bar view. I can show you the bars. I can show you line view. I can show you an area chart, and you get the point. There's pie charts. There's single values as well. Some of these, not all of these, are good for depending on your data series. You're going to choose your chart. If I choose just a single value, notice this 83.0. If I go back to my table, that's this value in here. So it just takes the first value it finds and it plots it. Not the smartest. Probably the better one for me to plot things would be this one in here, right? The ability to show you all the different status codes that I have plotted in here. All right, so far I feel pretty good about my query. Let's do this. What if I wanted to show you only those status codes that are 200 and 404? Because really what I care is my 404s compared to my 200s. So I'm going to add this in here, this other filter. I'm going to run this search, and now I'm only getting my 404s and my 200s. So there is my 200s, much higher than my 404s as I expected. And perhaps what I want to do is I want to show the relationship between those two. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how I can go to a bar chart. In this case, this bar chart's not all that meaningful. It's plotting my 200s against my 404s. But what if I play with the different properties in here? Every single chart that you choose, whether it's line, area, bar, horizontal, pie, has different properties that you can play with by clicking on this cogwheel. So in this case, I'm going to change, let's change the series. I'm going to make my 404s be a line, and I'm going to choose a new secondary axis so that they get overlaid one on top of each other, and I can see the relationship. And click on Save. There you go. So now what I'm looking at is my 200s and relative to the volume of my 404s. So as I'd expect, when my traffic goes up, noted by my 200s, my 404s also go up. What I wouldn't want to see is when my traffic doesn't go up, but my 404s do go up. For example, in here's a case where my 404s stayed a little high when my traffic actually dropped. So I can start identifying those kinds of things. All right, in a little bit, I'm going to show you how to plot this thing, and we do that by how to graph it. How to put this in a dashboard, and we do that by using the Create panel. But before I do that, let me show you a few other queries and a few other types of charts that you can build. In this particular case, I'm going to plot IP addresses on a map. I'm using the source category equals Apache access. Then I'm using this parse statement to grab the IP address and store it as client IP. And then I'm using the lookup operator. And lookup is looking for the latitude and the longitude from this particular geolocation service, and it's doing it on IP address. And then all I'm doing is I'm counting that latitude and that longitude and sorting it by count. That gives me this table over here. The good news is that I can plot this. For example, I can plot it this way. Not all that meaningful. I can plot it with a line graph, and it's not all that meaningful necessarily. But one of the options that I have as well is the map. And in this case, this map is showing me where these different data points find. And the usual stuff applies in here. I can start zooming. Let me zoom into that, say, New York area. I can start zooming, and you see that you start getting a little more granularity as you zoom into the different areas in there. All right. Last one that I wanted to show you from a charting perspective is this one here using the outlier operator. So in this particular case, I am looking again at my Apache access data to keep it simple. I'm only looking at those messages that have a status code of 404. I'm time slicing by 1 minute. I'm counting by time slice so that I can have a count by every 1 minute for the last 60 minutes. And then I'm using this operator called outlier. What outlier does is not only does it provide me the count as I had requested in the previous lines, but it builds all these other fields for me. It builds an upper, a lower, an error, an indicator violation, and a mean and a standard deviation. These numbers allow me to point and figure out whether my 404s are outside of a certain standard deviation according to previous number of 404s. It tells it, go back 10 data points and find out what my 404 numbers looked like back then. And that's how you want to identify the standard deviation now. And how many standard deviations should I use? Well, I want you to use 3. Let me plot this so you can see what this ends up looking like. The blue line, the darker blue line in the middle, shows me my actual data point at this particular point in time. And the shaded area around it is showing me 3 standard deviations according to the data that I gathered from the last 10 data points. And if you notice, there's a blank in here. That's because it took 10 data points for it to start figuring out what that window, what that shaded area is going to look like. The triangle that you see in here is something that is outside of that data point, outside of that standard deviation. So for example, if I were to change my threshold to, let's say 1, you'd expect that shaded area to be narrower, and there will be a lot more things outside of that shaded area, meaning that I'm outside of that 1 standard deviation. And this is effectively how you end up going about building alerts. You use something like an outlier to build your alerts. Okay, all this was to show you the different charts that you can build. Obviously, we don't have time to go through all of these, but there's quite a few different options in here. What I want to do now is let's take some of these and let's start adding them to dashboards. Some of you said you've never built a dashboard, and I'm going to walk you from scratch on how to go about doing it. So you've got your chart, you're pretty happy with your chart, and you want to put it in a dashboard. What you want to do is you want to create a panel. And when you create a panel, you can give it a name. Let's say I'm going to call this my 400s versus 200s. If you remember, this is my graph showing me that kind of stuff. And I can put it either in a dashboard that already exists, or I can put it in a brand new dashboard just by adding a name in here. So I'm going to call it my dashboard. Terrible name, but that's what I decided. Oh, and if I could spell, that would be even better. My dashboard. All right, and I click on add, and it's asking me, where do you want to store this? Do you want to put this under your personal folder, in your training folder? Let me just put it in my training folder. Why not? And then click on add. And what it's doing right now is it's opening a new tab, and it's going to build that new dashboard with just 1 panel, because that's all there is to it. There it is. Here's my new dashboard with my 1 panel, and I can enlarge it. I can make it as big as I want, and it's just showing me my data points in here. Let's make this a little more interesting. I'm going to show you how to add a couple of things in here. One of the things that you can do is you can add other panels that are not data panels. So those mean I can add a title panel. This is my first dashboard, and click on submit. And what it's going to do is it's just going to add a title page, which I can move, a title panel, which I can move to wherever I want. There you go. And while I'm at it, I'm also going to add a text panel, which is something that I can use to explain others my data, understanding your data, for example. And in here, I can put any text that I want, explaining to other users how to view my dashboard. And I could even, if I wanted to, I could add links to other dashboards as well. Let me ask a link to this one here and click on add and click submit. So there you go. I just built myself a panel that is just text. Oops, it's just a text panel. And with this text panel, I can explain to other users what they're looking at when they look at my dashboard. And you notice in less than 5 minutes, I was able to add my dashboard and put a couple of things in there. In the same way, I could go back, I can grab my, let's say, my IP addresses that I was plotting here, and I can do the exact same thing. I can add to panel, And it's asking me, well, do you want to put it in your dashboard, the one that you called my dashboard? And I can say, yeah, why not? And I'm going to call it plotting IP locations on map. Click on add. And as you'd expect, it's going to refresh that dashboard that I had built with a new panel in it. And while it's at it, I'm going to go back and also add this one that I had built in here. Let's change this back to a threshold of 3. Let's make it a threshold of 2. I think that looked a little bit better. And it's a good intermediate place. And if I like it, I can just say create a panel. It's going to ask me again, where do you want to put it? And let's just call it increase in 404s. Click on add. And as you'd expect, it's going to go and add another panel in there. And there you go. Within 10 minutes, I was able to grab my 3 different panels and just dump them here into a dashboard and create myself a brand new dashboard. Now, since I am the owner of this dashboard, I can do things like if I click here, not only can I delete the dashboard because I'm the owner, I could do all the other stuff that I could do when I was not the owner, but I could also toggle. Let's say that you prefer to see the dark theme for this dashboard. I can just do that, and by doing that and clicking on Done Editing, anybody that I share this dashboard with, they will get to see this kind of view for this particular dashboard. I mentioned before that I can add different panels, but last but not least, I can also share this dashboard. Remember, this dashboard is mine. I own it, and I can click on this and say anyone in my organization can view this dashboard. Click on that, provide them the shareable link, or if I wanted to, since I'm giving access to anyone in their organization to view it, they will be able to access this through the library, and I'll show you that in just a second. But to complete this particular screen, when I share this link, people get to see if they have data restrictions themselves. Let's say that, for example, someone is not allowed to look at the Apache data. They will look at my dashboards, but they will see empty panels because they're restricted from seeing that data. I actually can edit that kind of stuff. I can say that I want to share this dashboard with my level of data access. So even for those people who don't have access to Apache Access data, I can uncheck this box, click on done, and they would get to see that kind of access in there. So, all right, now that I've shown you a couple of those things, I think I told you about filters as well. I have the ability to add filters, so I could go in here and say, oh, I want people to be able to perhaps be able to edit this by source IP. And I can edit that and change the label and say, enter your source IP to give it just a little cleaner way. And on top of that, I can say, which panels should this apply to? Well, it doesn't make sense for it to apply to this one. So I'm going to uncheck that. And it doesn't make sense to apply to this. So this is saying, when someone uses this filter, I want that filter to only apply to this particular panel in here. Click on save, and there you go. If I'm done editing, when someone comes into my dashboard, this is what they get to see, and they get to see this particular filter. They can enter that filter, and that filter will filter out only this particular panel in here. Okay, I see no questions, so I'm going to move over to the library here for just a second. So to complete the story of sharing dashboards, one of the things that you can do in your library is you can go to your entire org. When you go to the entire org, you can see everybody in your organization who has shared content. In my case, I shared content under Mario. So if I go under Mario, I can see everything that Mario has shared. And all these are dashboards that Mario has shared, or dashboards or data that Mario has shared out there. And if you notice, Mario hasn't shared that particular training folder, so therefore my data doesn't show up. But now if I go to my personal stuff, let me go in here, let me go into training, and then, or actually from personal, if I go into that training folder, and if I highlight this particular, see how it says not published? If I click on that, all of a sudden I'm making it published. I can change the name, give a description, and click on publish. Now, if anybody were to go into org and they were to go under Mario, they can see that training folder, and under that training folder, they would see my dashboard as well. So that's how you go about sharing data. And if there's anything I can tell you from today's session is as much content as you build, feel free to share it with your organization because it's very, very, very possible that someone in your organization is also looking to build a very similar dashboard or is looking to get access to that same kind of data. So the more you share, the more you're going to make it easier amongst yourselves. The other thing I'm going to say is I just showed you today how to start from scratch, how to build something from scratch, create the query, and then from the query plot it and all that good stuff. If I were you, I'd give myself the opportunity to go into library and apps and see if something's already been built. Because if it has, there's no reason for you to start from scratch. Remember, there's quite a few apps here to get you started, and there's also some preview apps which might change slightly by the end. By the time they become apps and they make it into this other tab, but it would certainly get you about 80% of the time of the area there. There's a question I have here from Robert. Let's see. Robert is asking, what if I have multiple data sources, say several authentication servers or firewalls? So should the data sources have the same name? So I'm assuming you're talking about, Robert, I'm assuming you're talking about when you are installing an app. Is that fair to say? So question for everybody else who can't read it, Robert's question says, what if I have multiple data sources? For example, say I have several authentication servers or firewalls. Should the data sources have the same name? So if you are talking about loading your data, what I would do is I would install different collectors, or you can install the same collector but have different sources in it. Because remember that all the different source, that a source category depends on a source. So what I would do is have different sources so that you should have different source categories for them, or different data sources, if you will. And that way you can differentiate them. You can put them all in the same dashboard. That's completely fine. But if you ever want to differentiate it, you can always add the count by data source so that you can have distinction for those kinds of things. Your question says, should the collectors use the same name for the dashboard? I'm not sure I'm understanding the question, but I think I'm getting your point. I would. It's okay putting in the same dashboard, but if you want to give yourself the opportunity to have the granularity to look at each individual firewall, for example, I would give it a different source name so that in your dashboards you can always edit your dashboards, if you will, to have the ability to search by different sources. Okay. And if you want examples specifically, Robert, feel free to email me directly. I'd be more than happy. If you want to show me your dashboards, I'd be more than happy to help you. My email is mario@sumologic.com. So I'd be happy to walk you through that as well. Excellent. So there's one more thing I do want to cover, and I'm going to go back to the slides to be able to show you that particular piece as well. I'm going to skip these few slides in here, which I will share with you along with this video, since these slides talk about what I just showed you in the demo itself. Live versus interactive mode. So keep in mind that live mode, you're going to turn your live mode when you want to display things in large screens. So if you want to put something in your operations center, or you want to put it up on the big screen somewhere, that's when you're going to turn live mode. For everything else, you're going to be using the non-live mode, meaning the interactive mode. If you're doing data exploration, if you want to do historical reporting, if you want to do any kind of investigation, you will most likely be in interactive mode. So to that point, I want to talk about a couple of things. By the way, these screens that I'm flashing through is just the ability, just the same thing that I showed you how to do. But I wanted to get this to this last screen here. So behind the scenes, Sumo Logic does a lot of optimization. We try to optimize your queries as you're searching through things. We try to optimize quite a few things within the entire Sumo Logic experience. From a dashboard perspective, we also try to do the same. When you're in a live mode, what we end up doing is a dashboard that is in live mode has what we call a constant query, or a CQ, that is running in the background. And that CQ is just constant. It's essentially running live and it's getting that data updated so that when you pull up that query, or I'm sorry, when you pull up that dashboard, your results are going to be served quickly because that query is constant. Now, that CQ is kept alive as long as your dashboard is viewed at least once every 30 days. If we see that you're not using that dashboard all that much, then we're going to turn off that CQ because that's not something that we need to keep on. But essentially, if you view it every 30 days, it just continues to keep that CQ alive and your dashboard just runs. Now, there's a couple of limitations because we don't support all operators in live mode. So there's a small set of operators that are not supported by live mode. And now I'll share this slide with you so that you can go and check out which ones are those. Sorry about that. From an interactive mode, meaning that your dashboard does not have to run on a continuous basis, we also attempt to optimize the panels. So every time you click on search or every time you click on refresh, it goes back and grabs that data and brings it back to you. We try to optimize those dashboards whenever you either choose a time range that is greater than 6 hours. So if it's less than 6 hours, it's easy for us to just go and grab that data. But if we're looking at data that's more than 6 hours, we're going to start trying to optimize that dashboard for you to make your queries a lot more meaningful or to create a scheduled view in the background. Or if you decide to publish a dashboard and share it with other people, we're also going to optimize that interactive dashboard because we're assuming a lot more people are going to be viewing it. So we want to make the best experience for everybody out there. Now, any dashboard that has optimized panels, those can run parallel and they can improve your efficiency. For those panels that are non-optimized, they usually are going to run serially. So we're going to wait for one non-optimized panel to finish in order to take the next one. So it's always great to have your dashboards optimized as much as you can. There are, again, some limitations because there is a few operators that don't support this interactive mode optimization. And again, I'll share this slide with you guys so that you can look at which ones are those particular operators. Fantastic. So overall, I've shown you an overview of dashboards and panels. We've shown you how to create dashboards from scratch. We've also shown you how to use some of the dashboards that are out of the box with those apps that are already installed. I've shown you how to use dashboards with live mode. And last but not least, we covered a little bit about panel optimization. So with that said, let me open it up for questions to see if there's anybody that has questions out here.